When I was trapped in that elevator, I thought I was going to die. But what suffocated me the most wasn't the confined space. It was my own home. I came back expecting concern, but all I received were accusations, indifference, and neglect. I've spent my entire life working tirelessly, yet my husband, George, treats me like I don't exist. My son, Eric, does nothing but criticize me. My daughter-in-law, Megan, sees me as a free babysitter. Even my grandson, Owen, looks at me with disdain. In that moment, I finally understood. I was nothing in this house. The elevator malfunctioned during George's dance with his mistress. Eric was furious that I had inconvenienced him, making him late to pick up his son. When I limped home, injured and exhausted, the only thing they had to say to me was, "Go make dinner." Enough. I've endured a lifetime of this, but not anymore. This time, they're going to see that I am not someone they can trample over. When I threw down my apron and said, "I'm done," when I picked up my suitcase and declared, "I want a divorce," I saw the fear on their faces. I heard their desperate pleas. In that moment, I finally took control of my own life. My life is only just beginning. I was on my way to pick up my grandson, Owen, when the unexpected happened. The elevator malfunctioned as it reached the 8th floor. A loud bang echoed through the space, followed by a violent jolt. The sudden drop sent me crashing onto my hands and knees. My heart pounded in my throat, every nerve in my body screaming in terror. Then, just as abruptly, the elevator stopped. I let out a shaky breath, collapsing against the wall, my limbs drained of strength. Trapped with me was a young woman, already in tears, her face pale with fear. She scrambled to her feet and pressed the emergency call button. A voice answered quickly, reassuring us that help was on the way, urging us to stay calm. But how could we? The elevator was still dangerously suspended. No one knew what would happen next. A sinking sense of dread took hold of me. I pulled out my phone, desperate to make what could be my last call to George. The line connected, and before I could say a word, his irritated voice snapped. "What?" Fear had closed up my throat, leaving me unable to form a coherent sentence. "I'm in the middle of a dance. I don't have time for this." And with that, he hung up. I called back. He didn't answer. Panic rising, I dialed Eric next. I didn't know how long I'd be stuck here. I didn't know if I'd make it out alive, but one thing I hadn't forgotten. I was supposed to pick up Owen. This time, I cleared my throat before speaking. The moment the call connected, I quickly explained my situation, telling him not to worry and asking him to pick up Owen. His response, "You're completely useless." The line went dead again. I stared at my phone, my vision blurring. I had so much to say, so many things I wanted to leave behind, but I hadn't even been given the chance to say goodbye. Beside me, the young woman was calling her boyfriend. At first, he comforted her, but as time dragged on, his patience wore thin. "Babe, listen, I have work to do. I need to submit a report before the deadline. Don't worry, just wait for the rescue team, okay?" Her breath hitched. "If you hang up, we're breaking up." "Come on, sweetheart, don't be like that. You have to understand, I have responsibilities too. You'll be fine. Call me when you're out, okay? I'll come pick you up." "Don't you dare." The call ended. She clenched her jaw, wiped her tears, and without hesitation blocked his number. The elevator fell silent. I had heard every word. These young people had it so easy. If they were hurt, they could just walk away. George had hung up on me so many times, I'd lost count. Every time I called, his first words were always, "What do you want?" And every time, before I could say much of anything, he'd hang up. But today, what if this had been my final call? Would he have regretted it? I shook my head. No, he wouldn't. I refused to stake my life on his remorse. I would survive. I had to. "Ma'am, your knee, it's swollen," the young woman suddenly gasped. I snapped back to reality, glancing down and adjusting my pants. "It's fine. I hit it when the elevator dropped earlier." "Oh, okay, as long as you're all right. God, this is terrifying." "Don't worry, sweetheart," I murmured, my voice steadier than I felt. "We're going to be okay." Huddled together in that dim, claustrophobic space, we endured the agonizing wait, clinging to hope. At last, rescue came. By the time we were pulled out, night had fallen. I couldn't bring myself to take another elevator. Instead, I climbed the stairs, 10 flights, dragging my injured leg behind me. By the time I reached my apartment, my entire body was trembling from exhaustion, pain, and hunger. I barely had the strength to turn the doorknob. The moment I stepped inside, Eric's furious voice exploded in my ears. "Oh, so you finally decided to show up? Do you have any idea how much you screwed me over today?" I froze in the doorway. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't notice the way I was barely standing. His rage only grew. "I had to take time off work to pick up Owen. Do you know what that cost me? A huge deal. Gone, stolen at the last minute. Do you have any idea how hard I work? And all I ask is for you to handle one small thing, to help me for once, and you can't even do that? What the hell is the value of you?" "Enough. Stop arguing. You're disturbing Owen while he's studying." Megan stepped out of Owen's room, her expression darkening the moment she laid eyes on me. She let out an impatient sigh. "Clara, hurry up and make dinner. It's late and we're all starving." I blinked, the words sinking in. Then, without a word, I turned and limped toward the kitchen. The entire time, George remained sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to the TV, completely indifferent to everything happening around him. He never even looked up. None of them noticed how pale I was. None of them saw my trembling legs, how I struggled with every step. And suddenly, a deep sense of injustice crashed over me. I had just been through something terrifying. I had been trapped in an elevator, helpless and afraid. I had barely made it home, exhausted and in pain. And yet, not a single person asked if I was okay. No one wondered if I was hurt, if I was scared. All they cared about was that I hadn't picked up Owen on time. My mind drifted back to the last time I had asked George for help. My rheumatism had flared up so badly I could barely walk. The pain was relentless, stabbing into my bones day and night. I had begged George to pick up Owen just for a few days, just until I could move without agony, but he refused. He had dance practice with our neighbor Vivian, and apparently that was more important. When Eric heard about it, he wasn't upset with George, he was upset with me. "Mom, you're being ridiculous. Dad spent years working far from home, breaking his back to provide for this family. He suffered for over a decade. Now that he's older, he deserves to rest. But you've never had a job. You've never experienced how hard it is to work, and now you're making excuses just to get out of something as simple as picking up Owen? That's beyond selfish." So I had gritted my teeth and done it anyway. I endured the pain. I limped through every school run, pushing myself until I had nothing left. But this time I had been trapped in an elevator. I physically couldn't be there, and Eric still never once thought to ask his father for help. He knew where George was. He knew George was dancing with his mistress, and yet he would rather take time off work himself than ask George to step in, because in this house, George was untouchable, and I was nothing but a maid, a servant who had given up everything for this family only to be treated like I was worth nothing. A lump formed in my throat, my eyes burning with unshed tears. For years, I had told myself I was used to this. George's cold indifference, Eric and Megan's constant demands, their sharp words that cut into me like knives. I thought I had learned to live with it, but tonight, something changed. Maybe it was the pain in my leg radiating all the way into my chest. Maybe it was the crushing weight of everything I had endured. Or maybe for the first time in my life, I finally realized the truth. I couldn't take it anymore. I wouldn't take it anymore. And I swore in that moment they would pay for every single thing they had done to me. "Is dinner ready yet?" George's impatient voice bellowed from the living room. I snapped back to reality, inhaled deeply, and then, without hesitation, threw the dishcloth aside and walked out. I didn't cook dinner. George frowned, clearly displeased. "You're so slow. Vivian's already been texting me to come dance. Forget it, I'll just skip dinner." Nah. With that, he got up, straightened his barely rumpled clothes, and pulled out his phone. As he strode toward the door, I'm coming. I'll be down in a second." His tone was light, almost eager. That was when Eric stepped out of his room, his face fresh and darkening. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" I had had enough. "Whoever wants to eat can cook. I'm done." Megan, who had been lounging on the couch watching TV, jerked her head up, her voice turning sharp. "Clara, what kind of tantrum is this? Don't you care about your grandson? Owen has been saying he's hungry for ages," I scoffed. "And none of you thought to get up and make something yourselves? All you know how to do is sit there and demand." Megan puffed, arms crossed. "We don't know how to cook." Eric's temper flared. "Jesus, it's just a meal. You're really trying to blackmail us over this. Megan, grab Owen, we're eating out tonight." Megan shot me a glare before disappearing into Owen's room. Moments later, she emerged, taking his hand and raising her voice just enough for me to hear, "Come on, Owen. We're going to your favorite restaurant tonight." Owen's face lit up with excitement. He practically jumped for joy. "Yes, finally!" As he passed by me, he smirked and stuck out his tongue, a deliberate taunt. He had always hated my cooking, hated me. Every time I picked him up from school, he would throw a tantrum demanding ice cream, but his stomach had always been sensitive, and I had to control his intake. He resented me for it. I had tried so many times to make special treats for him, things that were fun and colorful, but nothing I did was ever good enough. The front door slammed shut, and just like that, the house fell silent, an eerie, suffocating stillness. I was alone. For a long moment, I just stood there numb. Then, slowly, I shuffled to the couch and sank down. I pulled up my pant leg and examined my knee. The bruises had deepened into a sickening shade of purple, and the swelling was even worse than before. I reached for the first aid kit, my hands trembling as I cleaned the wound. The sting was sharp, so sharp that tears silently slipped down my face. Once I was done, exhaustion crashed over me like a tidal wave. I didn't even make it to my bed. I passed out right there on the couch. I had no idea how much time had passed when the sound of the front door slamming woke me. George had returned. The first thing he did was start rummaging through the cabinets. "Where's the first aid kit?" I froze. My breath hitched. Was this it? Had he finally noticed my injury? My eyes burned with an embarrassing, involuntary hope. Maybe, just maybe, he had seen my swollen knee. Maybe he cared. Megan hesitated before answering. "I think it's under the TV stand." Eric frowned, stepping closer. "Dad, what happened? Did you get hurt? Why do you need the first aid kit?" George's reply was casual, almost dismissive. "Oh, it's not for me. Vivian twisted her ankle while we were dancing. It's all swollen, looked pretty painful." In that instant, it was like a bucket of ice-cold water had been dumped over my head. All that foolish hope, gone. I should have known better. That fleeting warmth I had felt shattered like a fragile glass, slipping from my grasp and smashing into pieces on the floor. A cold numbness spread through me, seeping into my bones. It felt like I had fallen into an ice-cold abyss. George grabbed the first aid kit and bolted for the door, as if every second Vivian waited was sheer agony for him. Then, just as he reached the exit, he paused, turned back, and without the slightest hesitation, gave me an order. "Make some chicken soup tomorrow. Big batch. I'm bringing it over to her. She lives alone, and now that her foot is injured, she won't be able to cook for herself." And with that, he walked out without so much as a backward glance. Eric barely reacted, just pulled out his wallet and carelessly tossed a few bills onto the table. "Mom, go to the market early tomorrow and buy the freshest chicken and vegetables. After you drop Owen off at school, start simmering the soup. Let it cook longer. It'll taste better that way." I stared at them, my mind blank. It wasn't that they didn't know how to care for someone. They just never thought to care for me. The image of the young woman from the elevator flashed in my mind. She had been ignored once by her boyfriend, and she had immediately chosen to walk away. And yet, what about me? I had endured a lifetime of far worse neglect, far deeper wounds, and I had never once considered letting go. Because from the moment I was born, I was taught to endure, to obey, to sacrifice. I was once young, naive, foolishly believing that marriage would be my refuge, But after marrying George, I realized I had merely stepped into another prison. He was quick-tempered, cruel, impatient. The slightest inconvenience would send him into a rage. Sometimes his anger was just words. Other times it was worse. But I never left because I had nowhere to go. I had been raised in a strict, conservative family, forced to drop out of school at a young age. I had no education, no job, no skills except for housework. So I stayed. If dinner wasn't to his liking, I got yelled at. If the house wasn't spotless, I got yelled at. If the baby cried too much, I got yelled at. Once, when I couldn't take it anymore, I ran home to my mother sobbing, but before the day was even over, my family sent me right back. A married daughter doesn't return home. No matter how wrong you feel, you swallow it. So I swallowed it. I learned how to cook. I learned how to clean. I learned how to endure. I learned how to become invisible. Then George left off to chase business deals in another city. He was gone for over a decade, and I stayed behind, raising Eric alone, taking care of his aging mother, holding the household together day after day, year after year. Then, when Eric got married and had his own family, he generously moved George and me into the city. He called it letting us enjoy life. The old neighbors back home envied me. "Your son is so successful. George must have mellowed out now that he's older. He doesn't hit you anymore, does he? You finally have your good days ahead." Good days? George ignored me. Eric ordered me around. Megan treated me like free labor, and Owen, my own grandson, hated me. I had given everything to this family, and in return, I was nothing more than a servant. I was done. I had sacrificed enough. Was I supposed to spend the rest of my days like this, enduring their cold indifference, their dismissive cruelty, their absolute lack of respect? And suddenly, the voice of that girl in the elevator echoed in my head. I want to break up. No, I didn't want to just break up. I wanted a divorce. Divorce. I want a divorce. The moment those words left my lips, it felt like 1,000 slams had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I stood tall. Eric's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. "You what? What did you just say?" I took a deep breath, met his gaze, and repeated slowly, deliberately. "I said I want a divorce. I'm done serving this family of ungrateful parasites. I'm moving out. I refuse to waste another second of my life taking care of you people." Eric's face darkened, his voice turning sharp. "Mom, have you lost your mind? You're too old to be talking about divorce. Aren't you embarrassed? Do you know how humiliating this will be? People will laugh at us." Megan rolled her eyes, scoffing. "Oh, Clara, is this menopause talking? What are you even mad about? Vivian? She's just Dad's dance partner. You're really making a scene over nothing." Eric's expression shifted, realization dawning. "Wait, this is about Vivian? Mom, you cannot be serious. They just danced together and you want a divorce over that? That's ridiculous." I shook my head, my voice unwavering. "I don't care what you think. I've made up my mind." A strange calmness settled over me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking permission. I wasn't waiting for approval. I had spent a lifetime suppressing my own needs, no more. My heart pounded, not in fear, but in exhilaration. I had never felt more alive. I turned, grabbed my phone, and dialed George. The line connected. He didn't even bother with the greeting. "What now?" he snapped, impatient as ever. I barely had time to speak before he hung up. Didn't even give me a chance. Perfect. A bitter laugh bubbled in my throat as I turned and strode into my room. I grabbed a suitcase and started packing. Eric finally realized I was serious. His face twisted in panic as he fumbled for his phone, dialing George with shaky hands. "Dad, you need to come home. Mom's lost her mind. She wants a divorce." As I packed my things, I realized how pathetically little I owned. I had spent my whole life saving, sacrificing, never once indulging myself, and now, as I stood here preparing to leave, it hit me. After all these decades, all I had to my name were a few faded, threadbare clothes. I closed my eyes, swallowing the bitter lump in my throat. From the nightstand, I pulled out my bank book and personal documents, stuffing them into my travel bag along with my clothes. When I zipped the bag shut, there was still a gaping, empty space inside. This was everything I had, my entire life reduced to a half-filled suitcase. Done packing. Eric leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at his lips, murmuring dismissively. "When is George coming home?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Eric shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "No idea. Vivian needs him right now. He can't leave her side." My hands clenched into fists. Eric clicked his tongue. "Come on, Mom, drop the act." His smirk deepened, laced with condescension. "This whole tantrum, it's just a desperate ploy to drag Dad back from Vivian, isn't it?" His gaze was pure scorn. "Mom, look at yourself. You're not some young girl competing for a lover's attention. Do you even realize how pathetic you look right now?" I stared at him. This was my son, a child I had raised with my own hands, a boy who had once been so sweet, so kind. No, I didn't recognize him at all. But Eric wasn't finished. His words grew sharper, each one a dagger. "Mom, you're seriously overreacting. They're both old. What could possibly be going on? Are you really making a scene over this? Vivian just lost her husband. Her kids live far away. He's alone, Mom, alone. Isn't it normal for neighbors to help each other out?" He exhaled loudly like he was the only rational person in the room, and honestly, you should be grateful. Do you have any idea how many people wish their kids would take them in and care for them, and here you are throwing a fit over nothing? His tone shifted, patronizing. "All right, Mom, that's enough. Just drop it. This is getting embarrassing. I couldn't listen anymore." My body moved before I could think. Frick, my palm collided with his face. The slap rang through the room. Eric stumbled, back eyes wide in shock. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. Grateful. I took a step forward, locking eyes with him. "Do you really think I should be grateful for spending every single day cooking, cleaning, and waiting on a bunch of grown adults who refuse to lift a finger? Do you think I should be grateful for dragging my aching legs to pick up Owen from school, only to come home and serve you dinner like a damn maid? Do you think I should be grateful for almost dying in an elevator only to come home and be scolded because I inconvenienced you?" I spat on the floor. "Grateful my ass. You've bled me dry for years, and you still think I owe you more. You still think I should keep being your servant." Dream on. Eric touched his stinging cheek, his expression twisting into something dark for the first time in my life. I saw it. Hatred. He hated me. This was the first time I had ever laid a hand on him, and yet after everything I had done for him, everything I had given up for him, this was what it took to finally get a reaction. Not love, not guilt, just hate. How tragic, how utterly, pathetically tragic. Madge C. Eric's temper snapped, his voice rose, shaking with fury. "What the hell have you ever done for me besides cooking and babysitting?" He whirled toward the window, jabbing a finger at the city below. "Look at my friends. Look at their parents. Every single one of them helps their kids. Buy a house, a car, something." His teeth clenched, voice venomous. "But you!" His hand shot out, pointing. "Straight at me. You're the worst. At least Dad bought me a car. What the hell have you ever given me? Have you ever worked a single day in your life? Have you ever made a cent on your own? No, you can't even support yourself." His lip curled in disgust. "You're nothing but dead weight, a burden." His voice dropped, dripping with pure contempt. "So what gives you the right to stand there and lecture me?" My whole body trembled with rage as I raised my hand and slapped Eric across the face again. "You ungrateful bastard!" His head snapped to the side, his eyes widening in disbelief, but I didn't care. A lifetime of suppressed fury, buried pain, and silent endurance erupted all at once. "You were sick all the time when you were little, constantly in and out of the hospital. Your grandmother said you were a burden, a waste of money. She refused to pay for your treatment. Do you remember who carried you on my back, running door toto, begging the neighbors for money just so I could get you the medical care you needed? It was me. Now you stand here and look down on me for not having a job, for not making money. Do you have any idea why I never worked when you were 3 years old? George, sister told me to send you away to let you live with your grandmother so she could take me to the city to earn a living. But how could I, your grandmother, treated you like a nuisance? She barely gave you enough to eat if I had left you with her. You wouldn't have survived, and now you dare to call me a burden. I let out a bitter, hollow laugh. When you were little, you were the burden I had to carry every single day. But did I ever resent you? Did I ever blame you? No, I loved you. You were my whole world. Eric's face drained of color. His lips parted, trembling like he wanted to say something, but no words came out because he didn't remember. He had spent so many years blaming me, looking down on me, treating me like the family's unpaid maid. Never once did he stop to think about everything I had done for him. I took a shaky breath, wiped my face, and forced my voice to stay calm. Yes, your father worked away from home for over a decade, and you think he had it hard. But do you know that for the first 10 years he never sent home a single penny? Do you know that it was me who kept this family afloat? Do you know that every single meal you ate, every piece of clothing you wore, every time you got sick, it was all on me? You think he suffered. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Did you ever stop to wonder what about me? And finally, the tears came. Had held them back for so long, but they poured down now, carrying decades of exhaustion, heartbreak, and pain. Eric's mouth opened and closed. He was choking on his own words, struggling to speak. Mom, he reached for me, but I stepped back. His hand hovered in the air. Stunned for the first time, real panic flickered in his eyes, but this time I wasn't going to soften. I wiped my tears, steadied my breathing, and spoke in a voice so calm it almost sounded cold. Eric, I owe you nothing. I have given you everything. You have no right to judge me, no right to blame me. Eric's entire body trembled, his face, twisted in pain, in something almost like regret. After a long silence, he finally spoke, his voice low, hoarse. Mom, I was wrong. I was selfish. I shouldn't have treated you like that. I'm sorry. I paused, Eric apologizing, but strangely, I felt nothing. I had been disappointed too many times, and sure enough, the very next moment he grabbed my hand, his voice suddenly gentle. Coaxing Mom, let's just take a step back. Okay, Latoon, forget about tonight. We can go back to how things were and we'll live happily as a family again. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Let me guess, you still think this is my fault that I'm the one making a fuss. Eric flinched, caught off guard, and no, Mom, that's not what I meant. You don't have to explain. I cut him off my tone, calm, but ice cold. Your father never cared about this family when he was young. He was always too busy helping other people, and now that he's older, he's still the same. He barely speaks to me, but he's running around playing caretaker for another woman. Eric, I'm exhausted. Eric immediately shook his head, rushing to defend George. Mom, you're overthinking things. It's just medicine. It's just being neighborly. It's not a big deal. Deal? I stared at him for a long moment, then let out a soft, cold chuckle. Is that so, then? Leeton, go see for ourselves. George and Vivian were never just dance partners. I had noticed months ago the stolen glances, the lingering touches, and now that. Vivian's husband was gone. They weren't even trying to hide it. Divorce. Of course, I was getting a divorce, but I wasn't leaving quietly. Vivian lived on the first floor. As I peered through her floor-to-ceiling window, I was met with a scene so disgustingly intimate that I almost laughed under the dim golden light. Vivian sat on the couch with her leg draped over George's lap, playing the role of a helpless, fragile damsel. George knelt before her, carefully applying medicine to her ankle like he was handling a priceless artifact. His face was so gentle, so focused, as if he weren't the same man who had ignored me for years. My eyes narrowed, lips curling into a cold sneer. So this was neighborly concern. Kimum, you're overreacting. Eric, standing beside me, waved a dismissive hand. His tone was lazy and different. Look at him. His face is serious. There's nothing inappropriate going on. It's late. Was this little investigation really necessary? Shut up. Keep watching. My voice was ice. George finished applying the medicine. When Vivian winced in pain, he leaned down and blew gently on her ankle. Eric let out an awkward chuckle, but his voice wavered. Well, blowing on a wound is pretty normal, right? He trailed off because the next second, George pulled Vivian into his arms and kissed her, like a match striking dry wood. The tension ignited instantly. Vivian made a half-hearted attempt to push him away, her voice as soft as a feather. Close the curtains. George hesitated about to get up, and that's when he saw me. Our eyes met, the air froze. A blinding flash of light. My phone's flash was on. Oops, my bad, left. The flash on, a loud, familiar voice rang out behind me. Wait! That voice. I turned around and nearly burst out laughing. It wasn't just Tracy. She had brought the whole squad. I had only told her, but somehow an entire gang of old friends had tagged along. These were women who usually complained about bad knees and aching backs, yet the moment they smelled gossip, they had outrun a pack of greyhounds. 7 of them standing in perfect formation, cameras ready inside. Vivian screamed and kicked George off of her with the exact same foot she claimed was too injured to walk. Perfect ran panicked, his voice cracked as he turned to Tracy. Tracy, what are you doing here? What did you just record? Tracy smirked, planting her hands on her hips. What do you mean? We were just out for an evening stroll. That's normal, right? We didn't do anything. Eric, now completely losing it, lunged toward her phone. Let me see that. You can't just record people. Tracy dodged effortlessly, clutching her phone like a prize. Hands off, my knees. Are bad if you hurt me. I'll sue you for assault, one of the other women piped up. Don't worry, ladies, I already sent it to the group chat. Whoever has a phone, check for yourself. Eric turned ghost white. Delete it now, you crazy old bat. The old ladies burst into laughter too late, and just then George stormed out face thunderous. What the hell are you lunatics doing? Tracy cued her hands around her mouth and hollered, Everyone look! The cheating husband has arrived within seconds. Windows up and down the block flew open. Dozens of nosy neighbors peeked out. Tracy pointed dramatically at George, her voice booming like a police siren. This is George and that's Vivian. Her husband hasn't even been dead a few months and she's already tangled up with a married man. And guess what? We got it all on video. Anyone who wants to see, come take a look. Shut your mouth. You're talking nonsense, George. Roared, but Tracy wasn't backing down. Oh, I hit a nerve. Huh? Why so defensive? We just caught you red-handed what? We're not even allowed to talk about it now. George tried to step forward, but he never stood a chance, and the 7 women closed in surrounding him like a pack of wolves, one of them sneered, voice dripping with sarcasm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is George and his dear Vivian. They thought they could get away with their little romance, but forgot to shut the curtains. It's like they wanted an audience. Another one chimed in, eyes locked on Vivian. Vivian, your husband is barely cold in his grave and you're already in another man's arms. That's some Olympic-level speed if you love performing so much. Why not do it out on the street? We'd be happy to applaud. Actually, ladies, I noticed them months ago. They've been sneaking around for a while. A collective gasp, and then, oh my God, do you think Vivian's husband died from the shock of their affair? Jesus, they're worse than I thought. George's face was livid. Vivian, humiliated, looked ready to faint me. I just stood there, arms crossed, enjoying the show. The whole fiasco finally ended when the police arrived. George looked like a complete mess. His clothes torn, his hair missing a chunk, his entire body disheveled and humiliated. The whole neighborhood had witnessed the spectacle by now. Everyone in the community was talking about it. I stood at a distance watching him stomp around in a blind fury, completely unhinged, and for the first time in years, felt satisfied, pure, unfiltered satisfaction. It was glorious. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. George sat in the living room, his face dark as an impending storm. The moment he saw me, his entire expression twisted with rage. You crazy was this. You're doing? I met his fury with a calm, cold smile. Yes, it was me. So what? His entire body shook with anger. You venomous woman. He slammed his fist onto the table, his roar filling the room. I'm your husband and you dare do this to me. Eric came in behind. Him looking like he had completely lost his mind. He was breathing hard, his hands in his hair, eyes filled with pure frustration. "Mom, what the hell do you want?" His glare burned into me full of disappointment and blame, as if he was the one being humiliated no matter what happens. "You should have kept it private. You don't air dirty laundry in public. Do you have any idea what you've done? How am I supposed to face people now? Do I even have a shred of dignity left? I didn't even look at him instead." Turned to George, pointing straight at him. "Why don't you ask him that question? HEK, the one who climbed on top of Vivian in full view of everyone. HEK, the one who disgraced you." Eric's face froze. George, on the other hand, turned a dangerous shade of red, his voice rising to a furious bellow. "You're insane, a complete lunatic." He jabbed a finger toward the door, his voice trembling with rage. "Divorce. I want to divorce. Course right now, get out of my house. Take your and leave right now for the first time." That night, I felt a wave of relief. Finally, I had been waiting for this moment. I had worried that George would drag this out, refused to let me go, trap me in this prison, but now he was throwing me out himself. Perfect. I didn't say another word. I simply turned, walked to my room, and grabbed my already packed bag. I had been ready to leave hours ago. I slung it over my shoulder, full, prepared to walk out of that house forever, but just as I reached the door, George blocked my way. "Stop right there," his narrowed eyes locked onto my bag, and something vicious flickered in them. "Put that down." His voice was sharp, dripping with malice. "You're not taking a damn thing. Everything in this house was bought with my money." "You leave empty-handed." That sentence. That absolute audacity. I laughed, actually laughed. It was a slow, cold, deliberate laugh. Then, without a word, I placed my back down. Eric let out a small sigh of relief, thinking I had given in, but then I walked into the kitchen. A second later, I strode back, out holding a knife, a long, gleaming kitchen knife. Eric's face went ghost white. George took an instinctive step back. I gripped the handle firmly, my gaze sharp and deadly. "Listen carefully. George, if you won't let me live in peace, then we're going down together for a second time." Seemed to rewind decades, once when I was young and desperate. I had held a knife just like this, facing off against someone who tried to hurt me and my child. No, I was standing in my own home, holding it against my own so-called family. Eric panicked, stepping between us, his voice shaking. "Mom, calm down. We can talk this out. Don't do anything crazy. Calm down." I lifted the knife slightly, just enough for the blade to catch the light. "Did you all think I was just some punching bag? Did you think that just because I spent a lifetime enduring that, I would never fight back? Even a clay figurine has fire in its core. You have all pushed me too far." George finally showed fear. He took another step back, still muttering curses, but his voice wasn't as strong as before. "You crazy old hag." I narrowed my eyes. "George," my voice was low, cold and deadly sharp. "I don't have a mistress to run to. I have nothing to lose. So if you think you can keep pushing me, you'd better start sleeping with one eye open." George's entire face drained of color, his breath hitched, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He tried to act tough, but the terror in his eyes was undeniable. "Get out! Take your damn bag and get out!" Eric stood there stunned, his expression unreadable. He stomped his foot, his frustration boiling over. "Mom, why did it have to come to this? Why did you push things this far?" I turned my voice calm and firm, "Because you all pushed me first, and with that I walked out the door and never looked back after my divorce from George. He wasted no time trying to humiliate me. The very next day, he brought Vivian into our home as if nothing had happened. Not only that, but they planned to throw a grand party like they were celebrating a damn wedding, but their joy didn't last long. The following morning, I hired someone to leave a special message on their doorstep, a very public blessing, and the results were immediate. Vivian saw my little gift and screamed so loud the entire neighborhood turned to watch the scene unfold. Within half an hour, they canceled the party. They didn't even dare step outside, but of course to comfort his precious Vivian. George went and hired a maid to make sure she never had to lift a finger. Now Vivian had truly become the queen of the household. I spent the rest of the day on the phone with my old friends, gossiping and laughing. Some felt bad for me, saying it was a shame that those two scumbags got away with everything. Tracy, of course, was the most furious. If I were you, I wouldn't have given up the house so easily. I'd stay there just to piss him off for the rest of his miserable life. Her words made me chuckle. Who's really going to suffer in the end? That remains to be seen. But honestly, why waste my life on George anymore? I had better things to do. Then Tracy sent another message. Clara, why don't you come live in my old house? I'm never going back there, and it's just sitting empty anyway. I knew she meant well, but I insisted on paying rent. After a bit of back and forth, she finally gave in and accepted a symbolic amount just to ease my conscience. And just like that, I left behind the place that had suffocated me for years and started over. Tracy's old house was in a quiet little town surrounded by breathtaking scenery. On my first day there, I cleaned the house from top to bottom, even took the time to till a small patch of land near the yard, planning to visit the market the next day for flowers and vegetable seeds. By the time I finished, my whole body ached, but for the first time, it was a good kind of exhaustion. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I opened my eyes, glanced at the sky, and instantly bolted out of bed. I'm late! I need to wake Owen up. He's going to be late for school! I rushed to the kitchen, ready to start breakfast, then suddenly froze. Wait, where am I? I looked around, slowly realizing I don't have to take Owen to school anymore. I was free, truly, completely, finally free. For years, mornings had been a daily battle. Owen refused to get up. I nagged. He dragged his feet. We barely made it to school before the bell rang. I never even had a moment to breathe, always exhausted, always rushing, always worn down. But now I could slow down, and for some reason, that realization made me want to cry. It didn't take long for me to settle into my new life, tending flowers, growing vegetables, enjoying the sun. My days were peaceful and quiet, and then Linda arrived, my new neighbor. She was around my age and, strangely enough, always seemed to show up right when I was cooking. One day, she walked over acting as if nothing was strange and announced, Clara, I can't cook. Mind if I join your meals? I'll cover the grocery costs. I didn't refuse. Cooking for two wasn't much different than cooking for one, and honestly, it was nice to have company. Before long, we became inseparable. Linda was bold, funny, and completely unfiltered. Every evening after dinner, we took long walks, laughing and gossiping like two old troublemakers. Life was perfect, until today. My phone rang. Eric. I frowned, hesitated, then picked up. Mom. His voice was choked with emotion, thick with regret. Can you come back? There was a tremble in his voice like he was about to cry. I paused, then I laughed. I wasn't surprised to see Eric's name pop up on my phone. Tracy had already given me the full report. Ever since I left, their lives had fallen into complete chaos. Megan and Eric were constantly fighting, and the root of their fights? Money, the mortgage, the car payments, Owen's expensive piano lessons. It was all suffocating them, and now, on top of everything, they had to cover the cost of George's precious maid for Vivian. Megan couldn't take it anymore. She suggested that Vivian start pulling her weight since she was now George's new wife. But Vivian? A housewife? A caretaker? She lasted exactly one day. While mopping the floor, she accidentally twisted her ankle and immediately took to bed rest for 5 whole days. George was devastated. He practically worshipped her bedside, waiting on her hand and foot. Megan, on the verge of a breakdown, didn't dare lash out at George, so she took it out on the maid instead. The poor woman lasted a few days before she finally snapped, storming out of the house with her suitcase, cursing all the way down the street. You people are a goddamn curse! I've never seen a family as toxic as yours! Words spread fast. Soon enough, the entire neighborhood started avoiding George's family like the plague. With no maid left, the responsibility of picking up Owen fell to Vivian. But did she actually care about him? Of course not. He wasn't her grandson. In fact, she still held a grudge against Megan, so she did what any spiteful stepmother would do. She used Owen to get back at Megan. She spoiled him rotten. One day, she encouraged him to eat 5 fried chicken legs and 3 ice creams in one sitting. That night, he ended up in the emergency room, curled up in pain, screaming on the hospital bed before being rushed into surgery. Megan, finding out what had happened, completely lost it. She and Vivian got into a full-blown screaming match at the hospital. Neither one backed down, their shouting so loud that even the nurses were too scared to intervene. George, in a panic, tried to break them apart, and in the chaos, Vivian shoved him. He went flying down the stairs and broke his stupid leg. That night, their happy family shattered completely. George, now stuck in a wheelchair, sat there seething with hatred, glaring daggers at Vivian. When Tracy told me this last night, I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my dessert. Karma is a beautiful thing. But Eric had no idea I already knew, so when I picked up his call, he immediately launched into a dramatic sob story. "Mom, Owen is in the hospital. He was rushed there last night. He just got out of surgery. Poor Owen, he's just a little kid. How could he go through something like this?" I stayed silent, listening. Eric paused, realizing I wasn't reacting. He quickly switched tactics. "Mom, can you come back, please? Just for Owen? Even if you and Dad are divorced, you'll always be Owen's grandma. He's been calling for you in his sleep. Mom, we need you. Please come home." As I listened, my brows furrowed. Eric was so full of it, I could barely stand it. Since when did he ever need me? This wasn't about Owen. This was about them needing a free babysitter again. Same old tactics, same old tricks. I snapped. "Do you seriously think I'm that stupid? You miss me? You need me? Don't make me laugh. You just ran out of people to exploit. You're the ones who invited Vivian into your home. Now you're paying the price. Didn't expect it to go this way, did you? Well, too bad. This is your mess, you clean it up. And George? He's only in a wheelchair? Damn shame. He should have broken his neck instead. Next time he actually drops dead, give me a call. I'll gladly come back to attend his funeral. Goodbye." Then, without hesitation, I hung up. Hanging up the phone, I let out a long breath as if I had finally shrugged off a mountain of weight from my shoulders. Linda had been watching the whole time. Now she leaned back, arms crossed, a satisfied grin on her face. "I was half afraid you'd go soft on him," she admitted. "I was this close to snatching your phone and cussing him out myself." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Relax, I haven't lost my mind just yet." "Seh." Linda let out a small sigh, her expression shifting into something more distant. "You never asked me why I came here alone," she said, "but I'm guessing you've already figured it out." She smiled, but it wasn't a happy one. I nodded. "You went through something like me, didn't you?" Linda hesitated, then shook her head. "Yes and no." Now that she had an opening, she slowly began to tell her story. Linda came from a coastal town in Maine, a place known for fresh seafood and lobster. But her husband? He was no hard-working fisherman. "He always called himself a fisherman," she scoffed. "But if I counted how many times he actually went out to sea in a year, I wouldn't even need both hands." They were dirt poor. She had no choice but to leave town and work in the city, busting her ass for years to save up enough money. Eventually, she was making more than her husband, but did he appreciate it? Did he thank her? Instead, he resented her. He said, "What kind of man lets his wife provide for the family? It's humiliating." But did he ever ask himself why he refused to get a real job? Still, she stuck it out. She put her son through school, paid for his wedding, even helped raise his kids. She thought finally maybe she could rest. Then she found out her so-called best friend had been sleeping with her husband for years, and the worst part? Her whole family knew, even her son. When the truth came out, she thought, at the very least, her son would stand by her. He was wrong. Just like Eric had sided with George, her son took his father's side. "You were always working," he told her. "You were never around. Becca was the one who actually took care of us." Linda had collapsed from the shock and heartbreak, so sick she was hospitalized for 2 months. When she finally recovered, she didn't hesitate. She took her share of the money and left, and that's how I ended up here. She finished with a humorless chuckle. Then she looked at me, something bitter but determined in her eyes. "You know what, Clara?" she said, voice quieter now. "I worked my whole damn life to provide for them, and in the end, what did I get? I bought my son a house. I paid for his kids, and yet he still blamed me for not being there enough. She laughed coldly. When I worked, I was neglectful. When I didn't work, I was useless. She exhaled, shaking her head. Sometimes I think no matter what we do, we're always in the wrong. I reached over and squeezed her shoulder gently. No, the problem isn't us, it's them. If the family is broken, then we build a new one. I smiled at her, my voice warm. Look at us. We're living together, taking care of each other, and we're happier than ever. Isn't this what real family should feel like? Linda blinked, stunned for a moment, then her expression brightened. You're right, we should be living for ourselves. Then suddenly her eyes lit up with excitement. But you know what, Clara? We've rested enough. It's time to start making money. I frowned, caught off guard. Money? Linda nodded firmly. You're amazing at cooking. Why don't we start a food channel? We'll film your recipes and post them online. I hesitated, feeling unsure. People pay for that? Of course they do. Don't worry, I've already looked into it. You just cook, I'll handle the rest. She patted my shoulder, beaming. I have a really good feeling about this. And just like that, we dove in head first. Linda was a force of nature. The moment she decided on something, she moved fast. I, on the other hand, knew nothing about this kind of work, so I just listened to her, followed her lead, and did as she instructed. For a month, we worked nonstop, and then it happened. Our videos started gaining traction. People loved them, and then our first paid sponsorship came in. When Linda handed me my first share of ad revenue, I stared at the money in my hands, feeling a rush of emotions: pride, excitement, confidence. I had spent a lifetime believing I couldn't earn my own way, but now I had just made my own money. We kept at it, posting more videos, building our audience, watching our numbers climb. Linda was thrilled. Me? For the first time, I felt truly unstoppable. I had a feeling the best days of my life were just beginning. Just as life was finally settling into a beautiful rhythm, Eric showed up at my doorstep. He dropped to his knees, sobbing like a child, face pale and drawn, desperately trying to play the sympathy card. Mom, I miss you so much. Ever since you left, the whole family's fallen apart. I'm exhausted. I lost my job. Megan and I fight every single day, and now she's threatening to divorce me. She said if you don't come back, she'll leave me and take Owen with her. Mom, I have nowhere else to go. You've always loved me the most, right? Right then came the biggest joke of all. Even Dad, he said if you just come back home, he'll dump Vivian on the spot and remarry you. Mom, we all waiting for you. I couldn't help it. I laughed. What a pathetic, desperate move. Tracy had already told me everything. Their house was a disaster. Vivian couldn't stand George's bad temper and controlling ways. She was begging for a divorce, but George, he wouldn't let her go. He cursed at her, hit her, forced her to care for him, demanding she bathe him, feed him, just like she once demanded from me. No, they were nothing more than two prisoners trapped in a never-ending war. Their shouting matches shook the entire apartment building. It was glorious, absolutely glorious. I was done wasting my breath on Eric. I turned around, walked into the kitchen, and came back out holding a butcher knife. I twirled it in my hand, my voice ice cold. Get the hell out! Eric froze. He had never seen me like this before, but now I was a woman who had nothing left to fear, and thanks to our cooking videos, I had perfected my knife skills. Eric's face turned pale, but still, he refused to back down. I'm not leaving, he insisted, growing bolder. I lost my job. The mortgage is overdue. If I don't make the payment next month, the bank will take our house. You have two options. Come back with me or give me money because I'm not leaving without something. I narrowed my eyes. For a moment, I just stared at him. Then, with a sharp flick of my wrist, I threw the knife. It slammed into the wooden doorframe inches from his ear. You still not leaving? I asked slowly, my voice dangerously calm. Eric frantically shook his head. I'm leaving. Just calm down. And then, like a rat scurrying from a fire, he bolted, didn't even dare look back. But the bastard wasn't done yet. According to Linda, he had rented a cheap motel in town, determined to wait me out. He wasn't giving up, And he wasn't the only one. Linda's son? Same story. He had blown through all his money and come crawling back to her for more. We stared at each other, both feeling disgusted. Then Linda sighed, shaking her head. Clara, we can't hide forever. I frowned. Then what do we do? Linda's lips curled into a mischievous smile. Simple, we disappear. The next morning, before sunrise, we grabbed our suitcases, headed to the airport, and vanished. Our first stop? California. We had enough money. We were done working just to survive. From now on, we were living for ourselves. Eric, George, let them rot. For the next few years, we traveled across America, from the bustling streets of New York to the vast beauty of the Grand Canyon, from Yellowstone's geysers to the pristine beaches of Hawaii. And our videos, they evolved. No longer just cooking. Now we captured the beauty of our travels, the richness of different cultures, the joy of true freedom. We didn't have fixed plans. We went wherever we wanted, filmed whatever we felt like. When we got tired, we took a break. Life was finally our own, and the best part? We weren't alone. Our videos inspired thousands of people. Mais pourtant, I finally left my toxic husband because of you. For the first time in years, I feel alive. I thought my life was already set in stone at 60. You showed me that it's never too late to start over. Thank you. You taught me how to love myself. Reading their words, I smiled. Looking back, my old life felt like a distant nightmare. Once, I believed that at 60, a woman should stay home, serve her family, and quietly accept her fate. But now I knew better, because as long as you have the courage to walk away, it is never too late to start again. Years blurred into a kaleidoscope of vibrant experiences. Linda and I, the two unlikely renegades, continued our nomadic existence, our cameras capturing every breathtaking vista, every heartwarming encounter, every hilarious mishap. Our food channel blossomed into a lifestyle brand, a testament to the joy of embracing life on your own terms at any age. We became accidental icons for women seeking liberation, proving that domesticity didn't have to be a life sentence. Then came the email. It was short, terse, and unsigned. It contained a single photograph, a faded image of George lying in a hospital bed, looking gaunt and frail, a tangle of tubes snaking around him. The caption read simply, "He's asking for you." A chill ran down my spine. Despite everything, a part of me, a small, buried, almost forgotten part, still remembered the George I had once loved, the George I had vowed to spend my life with. I hadn't spoken to him or any of them in years. My heart, hardened by years of neglect and betrayal, still fluttered with a flicker of something akin to concern. Linda, ever perceptive, saw the turmoil on my face. "What is it?" she asked, her voice laced with apprehension. I showed her the email, the photograph. She studied it for a long moment, her brow furrowed. "Do you want to go back?" The question hung heavy in the air. Did I? After all this time, after all the pain, after building a new life of such exhilarating freedom, did I want to revisit the cage I had so painstakingly escaped? "I don't know," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. "He's dying, Linda. Regardless of what he did, he was a part of my life for so long." Linda reached out and took my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "It's your decision, Clara. I'll support you whatever you choose." I spent the next few hours in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Anger, resentment, pity, regret, a strange, almost unbearable longing. Finally, I made my decision. "I need to see him," I said, my voice resolute. "I need to see him one last time." The flight back was a blur. As the plane descended, I looked out the window, a knot of apprehension tightening in my stomach. The city looked smaller, grayer than I remembered. The memories, long suppressed, flooded back with an almost unbearable intensity. I rented a car and drove straight to the hospital. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the hushed whispers, the somber faces of the nurses. It all felt disturbingly familiar. I asked for George's room number and made my way down the long, echoing corridor. my heart pounding in my chest. Outside his door, I paused, taking a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to face. I reached for the handle and slowly pushed the door open. The scene that greeted me was even more heartbreaking than I had imagined. George was lying in bed, hooked up to a multitude of machines, his face pale and drawn, his breathing labored. He looked frail, diminished, a shadow of the man I had once known. Eric was sitting beside him, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked up as I entered, his eyes widening in surprise. "Mom?" he said, his voice hoarse. He stood up and stepped back, giving me space. George stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He blinked a few times, struggling to focus. Then his gaze fell upon me. A flicker of recognition, of something I couldn't quite decipher, flickered in his eyes. "Clara?" he croaked, his voice weak and raspy. I approached the bed cautiously, my steps hesitant. "Hello, George," I said softly. He reached out a trembling hand and I took it in mine. His grip was weak, almost non-existent. I didn't think you'd come," he said, his voice barely audible. "I had to," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. A long silence settled over the room, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the machines. Finally, George spoke again. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his eyes filled with a deep, abiding sadness. "I'm so sorry for everything." The words, so long awaited, hung in the air, laden with the weight of years of regret. I looked at him, at the broken man lying before me, and the anger, the resentment, the bitterness. It all seemed to melt away, replaced by a profound sense of pity. "It's okay, George," I said, my voice choked with tears. "It's okay." He squeezed my hand, his grip momentarily strengthening. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for forgiving me." He closed his eyes and his breathing became more shallow, more labored. Eric stepped forward, his face etched with concern. "Mom, he began, but I cut him off. "It's okay, Eric," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Just let me be with him." Eric nodded and retreated to the corner of the room, leaving me alone with George. I sat beside him, holding his hand, watching his breathing, listening to the rhythmic beeping of the machines. Hours passed. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room. George's breathing grew fainter and fainter, until finally it stopped altogether. The rhythmic beeping of the machines flatlined. George was gone. A profound sense of loss washed over me. Despite everything, he had been a part of my life for so long. A chapter, however painful, had come to a close. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Then, slowly, I opened them again, a newfound sense of peace settling over me. The past was behind me. I had forgiven George, and in doing so, I had finally forgiven myself. I stood up, released his hand, and walked out of the room, leaving Eric to grieve. I had said my goodbyes. It was time to move on. I returned to Linda, to our life of freedom and adventure. The experience had changed me, deepened me. I had faced my past, and in doing so, I had emerged stronger, wiser, more grateful for the present. The food channel, our videos, our travels, it all took on a new meaning. We weren't just cooking and traveling. We were inspiring others to live their lives to the fullest, to embrace every moment, to never give up on their dreams. And as I looked out at the vast expanse of the world before me, I knew that my life, my real life, was only just beginning.
I should have known something was amiss the moment Alara asked me to join her and Liam for a special family dinner. My daughter, ever perceptive, must have sensed the trepidation in my eyes as I nodded in agreement, for she quickly squeezed my hand, offering a reassuring smile. As we gathered around the table that evening, the weight of Alara's news hung heavy in the air. Liam, ever the picture of poise, gently cleared his throat and proclaimed, "Rowena, Mom, I'm honored to tell you that Alara and I are engaged." In an instant, the room fell silent, save for the clatter of silverware against porcelain. Vivienne, Liam's mother, sat poised, her brow furrowed in what I could only describe as disdain. I glanced at Alara, her eyes shining with joy, completely oblivious to the tempest brewing. Engaged? Vivian's voice dripped with feigned surprise. How delightful! She paused, her gaze flickering between Alara and me. Of course, this is all rather sudden. Don't you think, darling? Her eyes narrowed as she addressed her son. Liam's brow furrowed, and I could see the discomfort in his expression. Mother, Alara and I have been dating for over 2 years. We've discussed this at length, and we're both certain this is the right decision. Vivian's lips curled into a tight smile, her eyes never leaving mine. Of course, my dear, but surely you both understand the gravity of such a commitment. She turned to Alara, her tone dripping with false concern. Alara, my dear, have you considered the challenges you might face? Her gaze pointedly swept over Alara's casual attire, a silent judgment. I felt a familiar fire ignite within me, but before I could respond, Alara spoke up, her voice steady and unwavering. Mrs. Westbrook, Liam and I are fully committed to each other. We've carefully considered all aspects of our future together. Vivian's eyes narrowed, and she let out a soft, mirthless chuckle. My dear, I'm simply concerned for your well-being. After all, you've yet to complete your higher education. Her gaze flicked to me, a thinly veiled jab. And your mother, well, she's hardly the exemplary role model one might hope for. The air in the room seemed to thicken, the tension palpable. I watched as Alara's jaw tightened, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. Mrs. Westbrook, I can assure you that my decision to forego college was a carefully considered one. Liam and I are building a life together, and that's all that matters to us. Vivian's lips curled into a sardonic smile. How admirable. She turned to Liam, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Darling, surely you can see the folly in this arrangement. Alara may be a lovely girl, but she simply doesn't have the social standing or refinement befitting our family. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears, my hands clenched into fists under the table. Alara's eyes had gone wide, her expression a mixture of hurt and indignation. Liam, poor Liam, looked utterly helpless, torn between his mother's demands and his love for my daughter. Clearing my throat, I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. Vivian, I understand your concerns, but I can assure you that Alara is more than capable of handling the responsibilities of marriage. She's a driven, intelligent young woman, and her lack of a college degree in no way diminishes her worth or her ability to be a loving, supportive partner to your son. Vivian's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of something akin to fear flickering behind her icy facade. We shall see about that, won't we, Rowena? With that, she rose from the table, her chair scraping against the polished hardwood floor with a grating screech. Come, Liam. I believe it's time we were going. As Vivian swept out of the room, Liam cast an apologetic glance in Alara's direction before hurrying after his mother. I reached across the table, taking Alara's hand in mine, my heart aching at the tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. Oh, my darling, I murmured, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. I promise you, we'll get through this, together. The drive home from the disastrous dinner was a silent one. Alara's shoulders hunched as she stared out the passenger window, her expression unreadable. I couldn't blame her for her subdued demeanor. Vivian's cruel words had struck a nerve, shattering the joy that had shone so brightly in Alara's eyes just moments before. As I pulled into the driveway, I reached over and gently squeezed Alara's hand. Hey, it'll be okay. I promise. Alara turned to face me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. How can you be so sure, Mom? Vivian clearly despises me. What if she won't let Liam marry me? I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. Alara, listen to me. Liam loves you, and that's all that matters. Vivian may try to stand in your way, but I won't let her. You're my daughter, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect your happiness. Alara nodded, her expression resolute. I know, Mom. I hate feeling so powerless. Vivian was so cruel, and I could see the doubt in Liam's eyes. What if she convinces him to call off the engagement? Then we'll fight for it, I replied, my voice firm. Vivian may have wealth and social standing, but she doesn't have the one thing that truly matters, a loving, devoted family, and that's something she'll never be able to take from us. Alara managed a small smile, and we headed inside, both of us lost in thought. As we settled on the couch, the doorbell rang, startling us both. I rose, peering through the peephole, only to find Vivienne standing on the other side, her expression unreadable. I took a steadying breath and opened the door. Vivienne, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? Vivienne's lips curled into a sneer. May I come in, Rowena? I'm afraid we have some matters to discuss. I hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. Of course, please, have a seat. Vivienne swept past me, her gaze sweeping the modest interior of our home with thinly veiled disdain. She perched on the edge of the armchair, her back ramrod straight. I'll get straight to the point, Rowena. I cannot, in good conscience, allow my son to marry your daughter. Alara's eyes widened, and I felt a surge of protective anger. Vivienne, you have no right to dictate Liam's choices. He's a grown man, and he loves Alara. That's all that should matter. Vivienne's eyes narrowed, her voice cold and calculated. Oh, but I do have a say in this matter. As Liam's mother and the matriarch of our family, it is my duty to ensure he marries someone befitting of our lineage, and I'm afraid your daughter simply doesn't measure up. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into the palms of my hands. Vivienne, how dare you? Let me finish, Rowena, Vivienne interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. I've done some research, and I must say, I'm rather disappointed in what I've discovered about you and your daughter. My heart pounded in my chest as a sense of dread began to settle in the pit of my stomach. What are you talking about? Vivienne's lips curled into a malicious smile. It seems that dear Alara has been, shall we say, less than forthcoming about her educational and professional background. And you, well, your own history is hardly the kind of example one would hope for in a mother-in-law. Alara's face paled, and she gripped the edge of the couch, her knuckles turning white. What are you saying? Vivienne's gaze swept over Alara, her expression dripping with disdain. Simply this, my dear. Unless you and your mother terminate this ridiculous engagement, I will make it my personal mission to destroy you both. Financially, socially, emotionally, you name it. I will stop at nothing to ensure that Liam never marries the likes of you. The room fell silent, save for the rapid pounding of my heart. Vivienne had clearly done her homework, and the implications of her threat were not lost on me. I glanced at Alara, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty, and I knew in that moment that I would do whatever it took to protect her. Vivienne, I said, my voice low and steady, if you think for one moment that I will allow you to terrorize my daughter, you're sorely mistaken. Alara and I will not be bullied, not by you or anyone else, and if you try, I can assure you, you'll regret it. Vivienne's lips curled into a cruel smile. We'll see about that, Rowena. You have 1 week to make your decision. With that, she rose and swept out of the house, leaving a tangible sense of dread in her wake. As the door closed behind her, Alara turned to me, her face etched with worry. Mom, what are we going to do? I pulled her into a tight embrace, my mind racing. Don't worry, Alara. We'll figure this out. I won't let Vivienne destroy our family. In that moment, a steely determination settled within me. Vivienne had picked the wrong woman to challenge, and I vowed that she would live to regret the day she set her sights on my daughter. The week that followed Vivienne's ultimatum was a whirlwind of anxiety and determination. Alara, bless her heart, tried her best to maintain a sense of normalcy, but I could see the fear and uncertainty etched in the lines of her face. As for me, I was a woman on a mission, driven by a fierce need to protect my daughter and her future. I spent countless hours poring over financial records, making discreet inquiries, and building a case against Vivienne. The woman was clever, I'll give her that, but I was no slouch when it came to uncovering the truth. If she thought she could intimidate me with her veiled threats, she had another thing coming. One evening, as Alara and I were settling in for a quiet night at home, the doorbell rang. I glanced at Alara, my heart pounding in my chest, and she gave me a reassuring nod. I opened the door to find a well-dressed young man standing on the other side. Good evening, Mrs. Kincaid. My name is Ethan, and I have a message for you from a concerned party. He extended a pristine white envelope, his expression neutral. I took the envelope, eyeing him warily. A concerned party, you say? And who might that be? Ethan's lips twitched in the barest hint of a smile. I'm afraid I can't disclose that information, ma'am, but I can assure you that the contents of that envelope may be of interest to you and your daughter. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing on the doorstep, the envelope burning a hole in my hand. I closed the door and returned to the living room, where Alara sat perched on the edge of the couch, her eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and dread. "Who was it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I held up the envelope, my brow furrowed. "I'm not sure, but this person claims to have a message for us." I tore open the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper, my eyes widening as I scanned the contents. "Mom?" Alara's voice was laced with concern. "What does it say?" I swallowed hard, my gaze meeting hers. "It seems that our old friend Vivienne has been rather busy this past week. This document details several of her, shall we say, questionable business dealings." Alara's eyes widened, and she leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of the couch. "What kind of dealings?" I shook my head, my lips pressed into a thin line. "Fraud, embezzlement, bribery, the list goes on. It's quite an impressive rap sheet, actually." I paused, my gaze locking with hers. "And it's all here, ready to be exposed." Alara's expression shifted from shock to something akin to determination. "So, what are we waiting for? Let's take this to the authorities and put an end to Vivienne's schemes once and for all." I held up a hand, my expression grave. "Not so fast, my dear. As much as I'd love to see Vivienne's world come crashing down around her, I have a feeling this is just the beginning. No, we need to be strategic about this." Alara's brow furrowed, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off with a gentle squeeze of her hand. "Think about it, Alara. If we go to the authorities now, Vivienne will know exactly where this information came from. And who do you think she'll come after first?" Realization dawned on Alara's face, and she sank back into the couch, her expression troubled. "Me. She'll come after me." I nodded, my gaze unwavering. "Precisely. And I can't have that. I won't let her hurt you, Alara, not on my watch." Alara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she reached out, pulling me into a fierce hug. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." I held her close, my heart swelling with a fierce, protective love. "You'll never have to find out, my darling. I'll always be here to protect you, no matter what." As we pulled apart, I felt a familiar, steely determination settle within me. Vivienne had made a grave mistake in targeting my family, and I vowed that she would pay dearly for her arrogance and cruelty. In the days that followed, I found myself in a whirlwind of activity, my mind constantly buzzing with strategies and contingency plans. Vivienne's threats had ignited a fire within me, a fierce determination to protect my daughter and her future at all costs. With the damning evidence in hand, I set out to meticulously build a case against Vivienne, leaving no stone unturned. I pored over financial records, traced shady business dealings, and even enlisted the help of a private investigator to uncover the full extent of Vivienne's misdeeds. As I delved deeper into the web of deceit, a pattern began to emerge, one that led me straight to the heart of Vivienne's empire. It seemed that her husband, Gregor, was unknowingly employed by a subsidiary of my own company, his paycheck signing off on the very same funds that Vivienne had embezzled. The revelation was a stroke of pure luck, but I knew better than to rely on it alone. Vivienne was a crafty adversary, and I couldn't afford to underestimate her. So I continued to gather evidence, meticulously documenting every transaction, every paper trail that could be used to bring her down. In the midst of my clandestine investigations, Alara remained blissfully unaware of the ticking time bomb that was her impending nuptials. She continued her work, her passion for her fledgling business shining brighter than ever, and I couldn't help but admire her resilience in the face of Vivienne's relentless harassment. It was during one of Alara's client meetings that I received a distressing call from a concerned employee. Apparently, Vivienne had been making a concerted effort to sabotage Alara's business, spreading malicious rumors and using her influential connections to sway potential clients. I felt a surge of protective rage coursing through my veins, and I knew in that moment that I could no longer sit idly by. Excusing myself from the office, I raced home, my mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios, each more dire than the last. As I burst through the front door, Alara looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "Mom, what's wrong?" I crossed the room in a few quick strides, enveloping her in a tight hug. "Oh, Alara, I'm so sorry. Vivienne, she's been trying to ruin your business." Alara's eyes widened, and she pulled back, her brow furrowed. What? How could she do that? I shook my head, my lips pressed into a thin line. I don't know, but I promise you, I'm going to put a stop to it. She's gone too far this time. Alara opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand, silencing her. No, Alara, I won't let her hurt you like this. It's time I put an end to her games, once and for all. Alara's expression shifted, a determination settling in her gaze. What are you going to do, Mom? I squared my shoulders, my eyes narrowing. I'm going to confront her, Alara. I've been gathering evidence against her for weeks, and I'm not going to let her bully us anymore. Alara nodded, her hands trembling slightly. I'm with you, Mom. Whatever you need me to do, I'm here. I pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. I know, my darling, but I need you to stay out of this for now. Vivienne's already targeted you, and I can't risk her turning her sights on you again. Alara opened her mouth to protest, but I silenced her with a stern look. Please, Alara, trust me on this. I need you to focus on your business and your life with Liam. I'll handle Vivienne. Alara nodded, her expression resolute. Okay, Mom, but promise me you'll be careful. I offered her a reassuring smile, though my heart was pounding in my chest. I promise, Alara, I won't let Vivienne win. Not this time. With that, I turned and headed out the door, my mind racing with the upcoming confrontation. Vivienne had made a grave mistake in crossing me, and I vowed that she would pay dearly for her arrogance and her cruelty. The community center was abuzz with activity, the air thick with the chatter of the well-heeled elite who had gathered for the annual charity gala. As I wove my way through the crowd, my mind was laser-focused on the task at hand, confronting Vivienne and putting an end to her relentless campaign of harassment. I scanned the room, my eyes searching for the unmistakable figure of Vivienne Westbrook. It didn't take long to spot her, holding court in the center of the room, her perfectly coiffed appearance a stark contrast to the warmth and intimacy of the event. Steeling my nerves, I made my way towards her, my steps purposeful and unwavering. As I approached, Vivienne's gaze locked with mine, a hint of unease flickering across her features before she plastered on a saccharine smile. Rowena, darling, what a lovely surprise, she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I wasn't expecting to see you here tonight. I returned her smile, though mine was decidedly more predatory. Vivienne, I'm so glad we have a chance to talk. There are a few matters I'd like to discuss with you. Vivienne's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and she gestured towards a secluded alcove. Why, of course, my dear. Shall we? As we stepped away from the prying eyes of the crowd, I could feel the tension thickening in the air. Vivienne's expression had hardened, all pretense of civility stripped away. All right, Rowena, let's have it. What is it that you're so eager to discuss? Her tone was laced with barely concealed disdain. I took a deep breath, my gaze unwavering. It's come to my attention that you've been using your considerable influence to sabotage my daughter's business. I must say, I'm rather disappointed in you, Vivienne. Vivienne's lips curled into a cruel smile. Disappointed, Rowena? My dear, I'm simply looking out for my son's best interests. Surely you can understand a mother's desire to protect her child. I felt a surge of anger coursing through my veins, but I forced myself to remain calm. Protect him from what, Vivienne? From the woman he loves, who happens to be a successful, hard-working entrepreneur? Or is it perhaps your own fragile ego that you're so desperate to preserve? Vivienne's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of the true malice that lurked behind her carefully cultivated facade. How dare you, Rowena? You have no idea the sacrifices I've made to ensure my family's legacy. Alara may be a charming girl, but she simply doesn't have the pedigree or the refinement to be a Westbrook. I shook my head, my expression a mixture of pity and disgust. You know, Vivienne, it's truly sad that you place so much value on such superficial things. Alara is a kind, intelligent, and resilient young woman, and she deserves far better than your petty, vindictive games. Vivienne's face flushed with anger, and she leaned in, her voice lowered to a menacing hiss. You've made a grave mistake in challenging me, Rowena. I will not stand idly by and watch as you taint my family's good name. I held up a hand, silencing her. Save your threats, Vivienne. I'm not the one you should be worrying about. I paused, my gaze locking with hers. You see, I've been doing a bit of digging of my own, and I've uncovered some, interesting information about your business dealings." Vivienne's eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of fear in her expression. "What are you talking about?" I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm talking about embezzlement, fraud, and a whole host of other unsavory activities. And I have the evidence to prove it." Vivienne's lips parted, but no words came out. She stood there, her composure crumbling, as the gravity of my words sank in. "Now, here's the deal, Vivienne," I continued, my voice firm. "You're going to leave my daughter and her fiancé alone. No more harassment, no more sabotage. You're going to keep your distance and let them live their lives in peace. If you don't, I can assure you that the consequences will be unpleasant." Vivienne opened her mouth, her expression a mix of fury and desperation. "You can't do this to me, Rowena. I won't let you." I leveled her with a cold, unwavering stare. "I already have, Vivienne. The choice is yours. Leave us be, or face the consequences of your actions. The ball is in your court." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving a fuming Vivienne in my wake. As I made my way through the crowd, a sense of grim satisfaction settled over me. Vivienne had been put on notice, and I knew that she would be hard-pressed to ignore the threat that now loomed over her. The days that followed my confrontation with Vivienne were a whirlwind of activity, as I worked tirelessly to put my plan into motion. The evidence I had gathered against her was rock solid, and I was determined to use it to bring her down once and for all. I started by discreetly reaching out to my contacts within the local authorities, carefully laying the groundwork for a formal investigation into Vivienne's shady business dealings. It was a delicate dance, one that required a deft touch and a keen understanding of the inner workings of the legal system. As the investigation gained momentum, I began to systematically dismantle Vivienne's carefully constructed empire. I exposed the fraudulent accounting practices that had allowed her to siphon funds from her husband's company, and I uncovered a web of bribery and corruption that stretched from the boardroom to the highest echelons of local government. The revelations were explosive, and it wasn't long before the media caught wind of the scandal. Headlines blared, painting a damning picture of Vivienne's misdeeds, and the public outcry was deafening. It was a stunning fall from grace, one that left the once revered matriarch of the Westbrook family reeling. Meanwhile, Alara remained blissfully unaware of the chaos that was unfolding around her. She continued to focus on her burgeoning business, her eyes shining with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Liam, too, seemed oblivious to the turmoil, his love for Alara seemingly unshaken by the growing storm. But Vivienne was a different story altogether. As the investigation deepened and the evidence mounted, I could see the cracks beginning to show in her carefully constructed facade. She was a woman on the edge, her carefully curated public persona crumbling around her. It was during one of the final stages of the investigation that Vivienne's world truly began to unravel. I had managed to obtain a copy of the employment records for Gregor's subsidiary, and the revelation was nothing short of explosive. "Gregor, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady as I confronted him in the hallway of the community center. The gala was in full swing, but the air around us felt heavy with tension. Gregor's brow furrowed, and he glanced around nervously. "Rowena, what is the meaning of this? I'm in the middle of an important engagement." I held up a hand, silencing him. "This won't take long, Gregor, but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." Gregor's expression darkened, and he motioned for me to follow him into a secluded alcove. "All right, Rowena, what is it?" I took a deep breath, my gaze unwavering. "Gregor, I'm aware of your involvement with the subsidiary of my company. I know about the embezzlement, the fraud, all of it." Gregor's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Save it, Gregor. I have the evidence to prove it, and I'm prepared to take this to the authorities if necessary." Gregor's face paled, and he ran a trembling hand through his hair. "Vivienne," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. "She did this, didn't she?" I nodded, my expression grim. "Yes, Gregor, and I'm afraid the consequences are about to be severe." Gregor's shoulders slumped, and I could see the weight of the revelations crashing down upon him. "My God, what have I done?" I reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "Gregor, there's still time to make this right. But you need to make a choice. Are you going to continue to enable Vivienne's scheming, or are you going to stand up and do the right thing? Gregor's gaze met mine, and I could see the conflict raging within him. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What do I need to do? I felt a surge of relief wash over me, and I knew in that moment that the tide was about to turn. Vivienne's reign of terror was coming to an end, and I was determined to see it through to the bitter end. The storm had finally come to a head, and as I stood in the grand foyer of the Westbrook estate, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Vivienne's once impenetrable empire had crumbled around her, the result of her own arrogance and greed. It had been mere days since Gregor's decision to turn against his wife, and the consequences had been swift and unforgiving. The authorities had swooped in, seizing assets and poring over financial records, uncovering an intricate web of deceit that had been years in the making. Vivienne had fought tooth and nail, her vicious temper and sharp tongue unable to sway the relentless tide of evidence that had mounted against her. But in the end, her efforts were in vain, and she found herself facing a litany of charges, from fraud to embezzlement to bribery. As I watched the spectacle unfold, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for Gregor. The man had clearly been manipulated and coerced by his wife, his own sense of self-preservation leading him down a path of moral compromise. But in the end, he had found the courage to do the right thing, and I couldn't help but admire him for it. The sound of the front door slamming shut drew my attention, and I turned to see Liam striding through the foyer, his face etched with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Our eyes met, and I could see the anguish that he was trying so desperately to conceal. "Rowena," he said, his voice strained. I need to talk to you." I nodded, gesturing towards the sitting room. "Of course, Liam. Please come in." As we settled onto the plush sofa, Liam ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed. "I just spoke to my mother. She's been disowned, Rowena. Gregor has filed for divorce, and he's cut her off from the family's assets." I reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "I know, Liam. I'm so sorry you've had to go through this." Liam's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and he shook his head. "I just can't believe it. I mean, I knew my mother was difficult, but I never imagined she would stoop so low, and now everything is falling apart." I squeezed his arm, my expression filled with empathy. "Liam, I know this is a difficult time, but you need to know that you have our unwavering support. Alara and I, we're here for you, no matter what." Liam's gaze met mine, and I could see the turmoil raging within him. "But what about Alara? How is she handling all of this?" I offered him a reassuring smile. "Alara is strong, Liam. She's been through a lot, but she's weathered the storm, and she loves you more than anything. This won't change that." Liam's shoulders sagged, and he let out a shaky breath. I don't know what to do, Rowena. My mother has always been a part of my life, and now it's all falling apart." I reached out, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "It's okay, Liam. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just know that you have a family here, one that loves you and supports you, no matter what." Liam clung to me, his body shaking with the weight of his emotions. "Thank you, Rowena. I don't know what I'd do without you and Alara." As we pulled apart, I could see a newfound resolve in Liam's gaze. "I'm going to be with Alara, Rowena. No matter what my mother says or does, she's the one I choose to be with." I felt a swell of pride, and I reached out, squeezing his hand. "I know, Liam, and I couldn't be happier for you both." In that moment, I knew that despite the turmoil and heartbreak, Alara and Liam's love would endure. Vivienne's reign of terror had come to an end, and in its wake, a new chapter was about to begin. As the dust settled in the wake of Vivienne's downfall, a strange sense of calm settled over our household. Alara, bless her heart, had weathered the storm with a resilience that I couldn't help but admire. She had maintained her focus on her business, even as the media frenzy surrounding her mother-in-law-to-be threatened to swallow her whole. Liam, too, had found solace in Alara's unwavering support. The rift between him and his estranged mother had been deep and painful, but with Alara by his side, he seemed to be slowly mending the wounds that Vivienne's betrayal had inflicted. I watched the two of them, standing together in the backyard, their hands intertwined as they spoke in hushed tones. Alara's expression was serene, her eyes shining with a quiet strength, while Liam's brow was furrowed, the weight of his recent experiences etched upon his features. As I observed them, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and protectiveness. They had faced such adversity, and yet their love had only grown stronger. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that the bonds of family and devotion can transcend even the most daunting of obstacles. The sound of the doorbell drew my attention, and I moved to answer it, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me expected to see Vivienne, her eyes filled with a desperate plea for forgiveness, but instead I found a somber-faced Gregor standing on the other side. "Rowena," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to speak with you." I hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, allowing him to enter. "Of course, Gregor. Please come in." As we settled into the living room, an uncomfortable silence settled between us. Gregor's hands were clasped in his lap, his gaze downcast, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the man. "I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice trembling, "for everything. I know that my actions, or rather my inactions, have caused so much pain and suffering for your family." I reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "Gregor, you don't need to apologize. You made the right choice in the end, and that's what matters." Gregor shook his head, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "No, Rowena, I need to take responsibility for my part in this. I allowed Vivienne's manipulations to blind me to the truth, and in doing so, I betrayed not only my family, but yours as well." I squeezed his arm, my expression softening. "Gregor, you're a good man who found himself in an impossible situation. Vivienne is the one who should be bearing the brunt of the consequences, not you." Gregor let out a shaky breath, his shoulders sagging. I've filed for divorce, you know. It's over between Vivienne and I." I nodded, unsurprised by the revelation. "I figured as much. You've done the right thing, Gregor. Now it's time to focus on rebuilding your life." Gregor managed a weak smile, his gaze meeting mine. "That's just it, Rowena. I don't know where to start. Everything I've known for so long has been turned upside down, and I feel lost." I offered him an encouraging smile. "Well then, consider this a fresh start, Gregor, a chance to rediscover who you are, without Vivienne's shadow looming over you." Gregor nodded, his expression resolute. "You're right. It's time I take back control of my life. And I want to start by making amends to you and your family." I reached out, squeezing his hand. "Gregor, you don't owe us anything. What's done is done, and all that matters now is moving forward." Gregor's grip tightened around my hand, and I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes. "Even so, Rowena, I want to help in any way that I can. Please, let me do this." I searched his gaze, seeing the sincerity that shone through. With a gentle nod, I acquiesced. "All right, Gregor, if you're truly serious about making amends, then I'll gladly accept your help." As Gregor's expression lit up with a renewed sense of purpose, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, out of the ashes of Vivienne's downfall, a new beginning could emerge, one filled with the promise of healing, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family. I fumbled with my keys, struggling to unlock the door while juggling my overflowing tote bag and suitcase. 3 days in Chicago for a client presentation, and I was beyond ready to be home. As the door finally clicked open, I stepped inside, already shrugging off my jacket and kicking off my shoes. Well, look who's back." The familiar smug voice made me freeze. I glanced up to find my cousin Elise lounging on my couch, one hand resting on her very pregnant belly. Her perfectly made-up face twisted into a satisfied smirk. "Elise, what the hell are you doing here?" I set down my bags, brow furrowing in confusion. She languidly stretched her arms over her head before replying, "I'm moving in, dear cousin, temporarily, of course." My mouth dropped open as I gaped at her. "You've got to be kidding me. Like hell you are." Elise let out a condescending laugh. "Oh, Rowan, always so dramatic. I've already cleared this with the family. You've got 2 weeks to move out and find a new place." The room began spinning as her words hit me. "Move out? This is my home that I worked my ass off for years to rent. What gives you the right?" "Family," Elise snapped, eyes flashing as she abruptly pushed herself up from the couch. "In case you've forgotten, blood is thicker than whatever alternative lifestyle you've chosen here. My baby needs a place to live, and your little singleton apartment is perfect." I clenched my fists, anger and disbelief churning inside me. First off, you don't get to judge my life choices. And second, I pay my rent here on time every month. What makes you think I'm just going to hand over my home because you show up pregnant and entitled? Elise clucked her tongue at me in a patronizing way that made my skin crawl. Don't be difficult, Ro. Mom and Dad agree. You might be able to throw away family values for some big city fling, but I actually have responsibilities now as a mother. A mother, right, the baby. I glanced again at her protruding belly, unable to hide my skepticism and disgust. You sure the kid is even yours, or are you just looking for a handout as usual? Her expression darkened at that. How dare you, you smug, self-righteous little... The apartment door flew open, cutting off her tirade. My jaw dropped for the second time as my parents hurried in, looking frazzled. Rowan, Elise, we came as soon as we could, my mother fretted, shooting me a disapproving glare. I should have known you two would be at each other's throats. My dad put a heavy hand on my shoulder, his tone grave. This attitude of yours needs to stop, young lady. Your cousin needs support right now. She'll be staying here until she gets settled with the baby. You'll just have to make other arrangements for the next few weeks. I gaped back and forth between my parents and Elise. This was really happening. My own family betraying me on the word of Miss Manipulation herself. Elise shot me a triumphant look, all traces of anger replaced by smug satisfaction. See, cuz? It's all settled. Now why don't you run along and start packing up your things? For a long beat, I could only stare at them, a storm of emotions raging inside. Shock, fury, resentment, disbelief. This was my home, my life that I had built through years of hard work and perseverance, and they were casually ripping it away with some misguided notion of family obligation. As the weight of their betrayal threatened to crush me, a familiar defiant spark flared inside my chest. Raising my chin, I returned Elise's smug look with newfound determination. Don't get too comfortable, I promised in a low voice, because you're not taking anything else away from me. After Elise's shocking announcement and my parents' misguided support for her scheme, I knew I needed to regroup and formulate a plan. But first, I wanted answers. The next morning, I marched straight to my parents' house, anger simmering inside me. My dad answered the door, his usual affable smile dimming when he saw the thunderous expression on my face. Morning, Ro. Everything okay? Cut the crap, Dad, I said, brushing past him into the living room. We need to talk about this Elise situation right now. My mom emerged from the kitchen, wringing a dish towel between her hands. Rowan, please, there's no need for that tone. I rounded on her, nostrils flaring. Excuse me? You two are enabling Elise's ridiculous power play, and I absolutely need an explanation. Keep your voice down, my dad chided, casting a nervous glance towards the stairs as if we might wake the devil herself upstairs. Your cousin is going through a difficult time. Letting out a hollow laugh, I shook my head incredulously. Going through a difficult time? She's straight up lying and manipulating you. Don't you see what's happening? Now you listen here, young lady, my dad said sternly. We're aware of Elise's past struggles, but she's brought a new life into this world, and it's time she grows up and takes responsibility. My mom nodded emphatically. Exactly. This baby is a beautiful blessing, and we need to support Elise through this transition to motherhood, even if that means making some personal sacrifices. The utter hypocrisy and delusion in their words made me want to scream. Instead, I pressed my lips together, reining in my anger as I studied their expressions. Deep down, I knew there was no reasoning with the two of them. Not right now. Elise's sob story and pregnancy had completely blinded them to her malicious intent. Unbelievable, I muttered, shaking my head slowly. Do you know how lucky that little parasite upstairs is right now? My mom's eyes widened at the insult, but I didn't give her a chance to object. She manages to snag herself a free ride by exploiting your old-fashioned family values, I sneered, making air quotes. What a conniving, selfish little... That's enough. My dad's booming voice cut me off. His face had flushed an angry red. I won't have you disrespecting your cousin like that in this house. We made our decision, and you're just going to have to accept it. Staring back at their obstinate expressions, I knew continuing this argument would be futile. A bitter taste filled my mouth as I realized the full extent of Elise's betrayal. She hadn't just turned them against me. She'd blinded them through sheer deception. Well, two could play at that game. "You're right, Dad," I said, my voice low and controlled now. "I need to accept that my own family has turned their backs on me in favor of coddling a liar and a manipulator." My mom opened her mouth, undoubtedly to protest, but I didn't let her get a word out. "But mark my words," I warned, holding up a finger. "Elise hasn't won anything here. By the time I'm through exposing her for who she really is, she'll regret the day she thought she could take what's mine." Spinning on my heel, I stormed out of the suffocating house. The image of my parents' stunned faces burned into my mind. Let them dismiss my threats for now. They would soon realize I always made good on my promises. As I started my car and peeled away from the curb, only one thought echoed through my mind. Game on, Elise. See if you can slither your way out of this one. After my confrontation with my delusional parents, I was angrier than ever, but also motivated to take action against Elise. I couldn't let her smug, entitled act go unchallenged. She had crossed a line by manipulating my family so thoroughly. First things first, though, I needed to figure out temporary living arrangements while I executed my plan to take back my apartment. That night, over some greasy takeout and a bottle of wine, I rang up my best friend Kate to lay out the situation. "That evil little gremlin!" Kate fumed after I recapped the whole sordid tale. "I can't believe she had the audacity to just roll up and take over your place like that." "Believe it," I said darkly, taking another swig of Merlot. "Especially when it comes to exploiting family ties for her own personal gain." "Well, you can't let her get away with this," Kate insisted. "We need to take her down, expose her for the lying snake she is." A feral smile tugged at my lips. "Believe me, that's the plan. I'm going to make her regret the day she thought she could one-up me." Kate grinned, the scheming glint in her eye reassuring me I had an ally. "Whatever you need, I'm here. My place is open to you too while we hatch this coup." Nodding, I felt some of the tension seep from my shoulders. Even though my own relatives had turned against me, Kate was solidly in my corner. That's what got me through the next couple of difficult weeks. I crashed at Kate's place while quickly seeking a short-term rental to keep my professional life on track. Meanwhile, I also set to work gathering ammunition to use against Elise. I knew from past experience that her sweet, helpless pregnant girl routine was a total act. She'd burned through family members' mouth generosity more times than I could count, especially when it came to money lent, but never repaid. Using a few underhanded tricks of my own, I began quietly digging up financial records, ominous social media posts and texts, and other breadcrumb trails from her shady past. I also worked some contacts to uncover unsavory details about the absentee dad of her supposed miracle baby. By the time I was done, I had assembled a fairly damning record of Elise's selfish misdeeds and manipulative ways. It wasn't going to be pretty when I finally revealed it all to our family. One evening, while scrolling through the file I'd compiled on my laptop, a new idea sparked. I smirked as I imagined the look of smug disdain wiped clean off Elise's face. This was going to be deliciously satisfying. I quickly fired off a text to the family group chat. "Important update from Rowan. Family meeting at Mom and Dad's place this Sunday at 3 p.m. Please make every effort to be there as this involves all of us. No excuses." The replies came trickling in, ranging from curious to dismissive, but I didn't care. By 3 o'clock this weekend, everything would be on the table, and Elise would learn an important lesson. Hell hath no fury like a woman whose home was stolen. Kate emerged from the kitchen, 2 fresh glasses of Merlot in hand. "What's that conspiratorial smirk about?" she asked, handing me a glass as she plopped down on the couch beside me. I turned the laptop so she could see the file I'd compiled, then showed her my call for a family meeting. Just putting the final stages in motion for Miss Elise's downfall. A slow smile spread across Kate's face as the realization dawned. "You're just pure evil, you know that? I can't wait to see her sorry ass taken down a few pegs." Clinking my glass against Kate's, I savored the anticipation burning through me. "Oh, believe me, this is just the beginning. By the time I'm done, Elise won't know what hit her." Showtime. I smoothed my hands over my black slacks, taking a deep, steadying breath as I eyed the door to my parents' house. All week, I had mentally prepared myself for this family meeting, rehearsing what I wanted to say and envisioning Elise's smug expression crumbling. Nothing was going to throw me off my game. Kate gave my arm a reassuring squeeze. "You've got this. That witch doesn't stand a chance against all the receipts you've gathered." "Thanks," I said with a tight smile. Her support bolstered my resolve. It was now or never to unveil Elise's deceptions. Squaring my shoulders, I rapped firmly on the door. It swung open a few moments later to reveal my dad. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Kate with me. "Rowan, Kate, come on in. Everyone's just settling in the living room." I strode inside, casting a sweeping glance over the assembled family. My mom sat primly on the couch next to a sprawling Elise, whose feet were propped up on the ottoman. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins filled out the remaining chairs, some with skeptical frowns, others wearing looks of curious anticipation. Elise arched one perfectly groomed eyebrow as I approached. "Well, if it isn't the disgruntled host returning to crash our little family get-together." Her syrupy sweet tone dripped with disdain. Keeping my face impassive, I issued her a level look. "Save the sugar-coated barbs, Elise. We both know this meeting has been a long time coming." "Girls, please," my mom cut in, wringing her hands in distress. "Can't we simply enjoy being together as a family without all this unpleasantness?" Before she could go any further with the misguided peacekeeper act, I turned to address the whole room, raising my voice to be heard over any objections. "I'm sure you're all wondering why I called this mandatory gathering today," I began, locking eyes with each bewildered relative. "Well, it's because I have finally obtained proof that our dear Elise," I sent a mocking look her way, "has been lying through her teeth this entire time about her situation." A hush fell over the room as I retrieved a thick manila folder from my bag. With methodical movements, I began distributing the contents around the room, printed out bank statements, screenshots of text conversations, even a few grainy photographs. "As you can see," I said in a ringing tone, "Elise has been far from honest about her financial woes, her so-called miracle pregnancy, and the guy who ran off as soon as he knocked her up." Wild murmurs began rippling through the room as every head bent over the paper trails I'd released. Elise's face had drained of color, giving her a sickly pallor. "Lies! All vicious lies, meant to make me look bad," she sputtered, struggling to gain control of the situation. I simply shook my head, holding up a hand for silence that somehow worked. "The evidence speaks for itself, cuzzo. Nice try, though, playing up the helpless single mom act to swindle my home out from under me." One by one, every head swiveled back to stare at Elise, newly enlightened by the secrets now aired out in the open. She squirmed under the weight of so many accusing gazes. In that moment, I could pinpoint the exact second when the stark reality hit her. The jig was up. She'd been caught red-handed manipulating our family's sympathies to fit her selfish agenda. A look of pure venom contorted her features as she shot me a murderous glare. "You're going to regret this," she hissed, cradling her belly protectively. "You have no idea what you've just done." An eager murmur coursed through the room, but I merely let out a hollow chuckle, holding Elise's fiery gaze steadily. "Save the empty threats, sis. I'm not the one who messed up here. That was all you. This is just me finally setting things straight and getting back what's rightfully mine." By now, even my parents were sitting in stunned silence, seemingly shaken by the black and white proof of their daughter's deceit. Satisfaction washed over me as I sensed the power dynamic shifting completely in my favor. I'd played my trump card against Elise. Now she'd be forced to contend with the consequences of her own lies and manipulation. And this time, there was no avoiding the fallout. In the aftermath of my dramatic reveal at the family meeting, an unsettling quiet blanketed the living room. All eyes remained fixed on the now visibly shaken Elise, who kept shooting me murderous glares between whipping her head around at each accusing stare. "Well?" I prompted after several tense moments. "Any other lies or half-truths you want to come clean about while we're all here?" Elise opened her mouth but seemed unable to formulate a response. My mom leaned forward, resting a hand on her arm. "Elise, honey, please tell us this isn't all true," she implored in a sickly sweet tone that grated on me. "Rowan is just angry and lashing out. You would never deceive your own family." At that, Elise finally seemed to find her voice again, a hysterical edge creeping in. "Of course it's not true. Can't you see Rowan has clearly doctored or taken these things out of context? She's just bitter that I need some support right now with the baby coming. I scoffed loudly at that. Need some support? Is that what you call shamelessly kicking me out of my own apartment under total false pretenses? The accusing mutters grew louder around the room. Elise shot me another death glare. Nobody is kicking you out permanently, she said with an air of self-righteousness that made my blood boil. I just need a temporary place to stay until I get on my feet as a new mother. Is that really so unreasonable to ask of family? I opened my mouth to retort, but my Uncle Steve beat me to it. Wait, just a damn minute here, he cut in gruffly. If what Rowan's showing us is true, which it sure as hell looks that way, then you've been lying through your teeth this whole time just to take advantage. Elise drew herself up straighter, lips pursing rebelliously. Well, I never. Can it? My cousin Jason piped up with unusual heat. Jabbing a finger at the photographs I'd handed out, he shook his head slowly. Those pictures don't lie, Elle, and they sure as hell don't paint you as some helpless single mom just looking for a hand. A tense silence fell over the room as Elise's mouth cycled through opening and closing again futilely. My Aunt Monica cleared her throat uncomfortably. I must say, I'm quite disturbed by these revelations as well. To deceive one's family in such a way. She trailed off, shooting Elise a deeply disappointed look. One by one, nearly every face in the room morphed into identical masks of stern judgment and disbelief, aimed squarely at Elise. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of triumph. Not only had I exposed her rotten scheme, but it seemed most of the family was finally viewing it for what it truly was, a bald-faced ploy by a con artist to exploit their kindness and loyalty. A nauseating gurgle of near-hysterical giggles bubbled up from Elise's throat as she eyed the courtroom of accusers surrounding her. Tears shone in her eyes, though I had a sinking suspicion they were more born of anger than remorse. You outright refuse to help me when I've got nowhere else to turn? After everything, you'd really choose some self-centered brat over your own blood? Her voice had taken on a dangerous, bitter edge that set me immediately on guard. Before any of us could react, Elise was on her feet, one hand braced on her lower back, while the other pointed an accusing finger straight at me. Don't think for 1 second this is over, Rowan, she spat, lips peeling back in an ugly sneer. If you thought I played dirty before, you've seen nothing yet. I'm not going away until I get what I need from this fucking family, and God help anyone who tries to stand in my way. With that ominous proclamation, she turned on her heel and waddled toward the front door, throwing it open. For a long beat she paused in the doorway, tossing one last withering glare over her shoulder. I'll see you all in court, she hissed, before finally departing and letting the door slam shut with a resounding thud behind her. The silence that followed her dramatic exit was deafening. I slowly let out the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, adrenaline thrumming through me. Whatever came next, one thing was now abundantly clear. The grudging respect from some family members wasn't worth the dangerous new enemy I'd just made of my own flesh and blood. Over the next few days, an uneasy truce settled over the family in the wake of Elise's dramatic exit. Most weren't willing to take sides outright, but a definite rift had formed between those stunned by her deception and those still in denial about her motives. As for me, I simply bided my time while casting furtive glances over my shoulder. Elise's ominous parting words had put me on edge, knowing her vindictive nature. I made sure to alert my landlord to the situation in case she tried anything underhanded regarding my lease. Nearly a week after the confrontation, I returned home from an errand to find the lights on in my apartment despite me turning them off earlier. Heart pounding, I quietly stepped inside, ears pricked for any sounds of an intruder. Going somewhere? I nearly jumped out of my skin at the biting voice that sliced through the silence. There in my living room, perched on my couch with a glass of wine in hand, was Elise. "What the hell are you doing here?" I growled, adrenaline thrumming as I registered her smug look. She arched one plucked eyebrow coolly. "No need to get all worked up, Ro. I'm simply here to talk before this situation gets any more out of hand." A disbelieving laugh ripped from my throat as I gaped at her audacity. You have some nerve showing up here unannounced after the twisted crap you pulled. Rising to her feet with obvious effort, Elise wobbled slightly before finding her balance. Like I said, let's talk this through rationally. Despite our differences, we're still family. Her tone dripped with sugary sweet reasonability that made me want to vomit. Squaring my shoulders, I stared her down unflinchingly. I'm done playing your mind games, Elise. If you think for 1 second I'm backing down or letting you slither your way back in here, you're sorely mistaken. Her lips curved in a vindictive smile. We'll see about that. But first, I want you to know exactly what you've done by turning the family against me. With a dramatic flourish, Elise plucked a folded piece of paper from her pocket and began reading aloud in a cold, even tone. I can't keep living like this, feeling like a constant burden and disappointment to everyone around me. The cruel words and accusations have become too much. It took me a few seconds to register the alarming words as my heart plummeted. Elise, what the hell is that? She silenced me with a look before continuing in that haunting monotone. Maybe once the baby is born, things will be different. But for now, the only merciful path is to... Enough, I roared, stomach churning. Recognition was slowly dawning, despite my mind's refusal to accept the awful implication behind her words. My gaze fell on the prominent swell of her belly, nausea gripping me. Elise folded up the note with a look of mock solemnity. A friend of mine found this in my bathroom trash after one of my darker moments. I'd meant to discard it, but she saved me from making a terrible mistake that night. For a long beat, I simply stared at her, dumbfounded by the new depths of manipulation she was stooping to. Finally finding my voice, I responded in a hoarse rasp. You're lying. You don't have a single selfless bone in your body. There's no way you'd ever actually consider hurting my unborn child? Elise's eyes flashed dangerously as she finished my sentence for me. You're right. It would be unthinkable. But that's how low your vindictive crusade against me has driven your own cousin Rowan. That's not true. I exploded, panic and anger swirling together in a volatile mix. I never wanted to push you to that point. I was just what? She cut me off icily. Ruthlessly exposing my flaws and insecurities to everyone, destroying any chance I had for a stable home for my baby? My mouth opened and closed uselessly, all righteous indignation failing me. Elise nodded slowly, expression grave. Yes, that's what I thought. Well, I sincerely hope you can live with that on your conscience. She cradled her swollen belly protectively. For my child's sake, I have to put some distance between us. But this isn't over, Rowan. Not by a long shot. With that, she brushed past me toward the door, leaving me rooted in place and utterly stricken. What game was she playing at now? More to the point, how goddamn far was she truly willing to go? My hands clenched into tight fists as her ploy started sinking in, using her pregnancy as some twisted bargaining chip against me. I couldn't let her continue manipulating me like this. As the apartment door swung shut behind Elise, a single thought crystallized in my mind with decisive clarity. It was time to go scorched earth on my cousin's cruel mind games once and for all. After Elise's latest twisted performance in my apartment, I knew I couldn't let her shocking theatrics rattle me. She was becoming increasingly unhinged and desperate, probably because on some level she realized the jig was truly up this time. With Kate's help venting out my anger and disbelief over a couple bottles of wine, I regained my determination. Elise's manipulative schemes had gone far enough. It was time to hit her where it really hurt, her victimized public image. The next morning, I printed out a copy of her ludicrous suicide note and texted the family group chat. Since Elise seems so concerned about her well-being being impacted, I want to make sure you all see the latest evidence of how far she's willing to go for attention and pity. This was her latest ploy to guilt-trip me into submission after her other cons were exposed last week. I attached the file and sent it off, letting the words linger ominously as the implication sank in. Sure enough, the replies came swiftly. Oh my God, is this for real? Elise. Honey, what were you thinking? You can't be serious right now, Ro. This is taking things too far. I allowed the mixture of shock, skepticism, and condemnation to swell for a few minutes before adding my own response. I'm deadly serious. After Elise was caught lying and shown the evidence, She came barging into my apartment, trying to emotionally manipulate me into surrendering with this garbage suicide script. Needless to say, it didn't work. My phone started blowing up with a barrage of new messages ranging from horrified to outright scathing towards Elise's actions. Smiling tightly, I knew my point had landed. There was no salvaging her stance as a helpless victim after this latest gambit. She had finally burned through any residual benefit of the doubt. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Frowning, I set down my phone and strode over to answer it. My jaw dropped when I found Elise standing on my doorstep, eyes red-rimmed from apparent crying. She clutched her phone in one hand with a white-knuckled grip. "What the actual did you just do?" The seething whisper that emerged was laced with pure venom. I arched an eyebrow coolly. "Oh good, you got my group text. I figured it was time for a little truth, considering all your deranged lying." Elise's nostrils flared as her shoulders heaved with unchecked rage. "You evil little You've completely destroyed me." With that, she hurled her phone straight at me with startling force. I barely had time to flinch before the screen shattered against my forehead, shards of glass slicing into my skin. A cry of pain escaped my lips as I stumbled back, hands flying to clutch at the bloody gash now seeping crimson. "Whoa, Elise!" Kate's shout rang out from somewhere behind us on the sidewalk before she came charging over. Elise twisted around, eyes wild and fists clenched like she was ready to throw down. Kate immediately inserted herself between us, shooting her an incredulous glare. "Get the hell out of here before I call the cops!" She spat at the clearly unhinged woman. "You're insane!" For a long moment, the two of them faced off as I clutched my bloody forehead and struggled not to pass out from the pain and shock. Finally, Elise seemed to catch herself, recoiling as if suddenly realizing the severity of her actions. Without a word, she whipped around and stalked towards her car parked haphazardly in my building's lot, throwing herself into the driver's seat. I watched through a haze as she peeled out recklessly onto the main street before disappearing around the corner. "Jesus H. Christ," Kate breathed out, turning back to examine my injury with a grimace. "Your cousin has officially gone bonkers. You okay?" I nodded weakly, hand clamped tightly over the still-flowing wound. Yeah, I'm all right, but Elise has clearly crossed about a dozen lines back there." Kate let out a disbelieving chuckle as she guided me back towards my apartment. "You think? I don't care how hormonal or pissed she is, that chick is off her rocker." She paused, giving me an appraising look. "Still, I'm sensing you feel like you've gotten through to her in some weird way?" A grim smile tugged at my lips behind my hand as the pieces started falling into place. "Oh, I'm done trying to talk reason into that snake, but you're right. I think Elise just got the very loud and clear message that it's time to back off." My eyes narrowed as I reflected on her breakdown. While frightening, it also proved my point. I had finally cut through all her manipulation and lies and exposed the twisted person beneath. The violent outburst was her unstable mask cracking wide open. Whether the rest of my family wanted to accept it or not, Elise had revealed her true, toxic colors, and there was no going back to her innocent victim act after this. I only hoped this was the dramatic climax before I could finally get my life back. Little did I know, Elise still had one more sinister gambit to play. In the aftermath of Elise's explosive confrontation at my apartment, an uneasy calm settled over the next few weeks. To the family's credit, most of them seemed to finally grasp how unhinged and toxic her behavior had become. The damning, fake suicide note file I circulated was apparently the tipping point that dissolved any remaining sympathy. My Aunt Monica was the first to reach out, inviting me over for a long overdue heart-to-heart. "I can't begin to find the words to apologize for enabling Elise's deception for as long as we did," she said, eyes downcast with shame. "Your parents are still struggling to accept the dark reality, but I saw the truth for what it was." I nodded slowly, appreciating her remorse, even if it came late. I only wish it hadn't taken such an ugly wake-up call. What Elise tried to pull with that suicide manipulation, it was a new low, even for her. Monica's face hardened as she gave a grim nod. Clearly the girl has suffered some sort of break from reality. As disturbing as it is, it does provide a perspective on how dangerous her mindset has become. We lapsed into a pensive silence, both of us ruminating on the emotional turmoil that had engulfed the family ever since Elise's sudden appearance at my doorstep, pregnant and demanding refuge. Finally, I cleared my throat. Well, I suppose now it's up to me to try and move forward, however I can, with or without the family's full understanding. Monica reached over and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. You have more support than you know, my dear. Elise's twisted games have opened many eyes that were too long willfully blinded before. Just take care of yourself first and foremost. Her words proved to be sage advice over the following weeks and months, as I slowly rebuilt my sense of peace and equilibrium. With Elise outwardly backing off, at least for the time being, I plunged myself into work commitments to re-establish a sense of normalcy. Of course, the process wasn't seamless. I still jumped at unexpected noises, always half bracing for another one of Elise's vindictive ploys to manifest without warning. And haunting reminders of her betrayal lingered in various ways. My external hard drive containing years of treasured photos had somehow gone missing from my apartment. Termites had inexplicably infested my dining room table, destroying the sentimental peace. But I refused to let her pettiness and toxic trail of destruction derail me entirely. Each time Kate and I uncovered another missing belonging or damaged memento, we'd simply roll our eyes and press on. Girl is lucky this is all the payback she's getting after what she tried to pull, Kate remarked one night as we carried the sawdust remains of my table out to the curb. I snorted, hoisting my end higher with a grunt. Trust me, I've thought about taking her crazy ass to court more times than I can count at this point. But I honestly just want to purge her from my life and move on. Kate eyed me approvingly. Spoken like someone refusing to stay stuck as the victim anymore. That's the attitude, Ro. Take back your power. I smiled tightly, appreciating her unshakable loyalty more than I could say. With Kate's stalwart encouragement, I slowly reclaimed my sense of self-worth and redefined my perspective. Instead of dwelling on Elise's rampant toxicity that had brought so much turmoil and suffering, I chose to appreciate the increased self-assurance and conviction I developed in standing up for myself. I was no longer the passive, unassertive girl who got steamrolled and dismissed by manipulative relatives. I had staked a clear claim to my identity, woven from resilience, integrity, and the knowledge of how to firmly enforce my boundaries when violated. Glancing around my cozy apartment one morning a few months later, I felt a sense of hard-won serenity wash over me. All of Elise's scorched earth attempts to destabilize my world had failed to fully shake the foundation I had reinforced for myself. I was bruised and battered, yes, but not broken. As for what further drama might arise regarding her future machinations, well, I'd simply have to cross that bridge when I came to it. But this time, I wasn't the same idle passenger just watching her disrupt everything in her wake. No, from here on out, she would be dealing with a battle-tested, self-possessed woman who was done playing games or placating toxic manipulation in the name of family. My newfound strength and resilience were here to stay, and God help anyone who tried to overstep those ironclad boundaries again.